Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. It is that time once again to talk about the next big changes coming to the following patch, being patch 7.23. Now this one definitely isn't the biggest patch in the entire world, but there's still some good information to discuss, so let's just get right into it. And if you end up enjoying the video, then definitely hit it with that like button. So the very first thing coming out, and probably the biggest new thing coming out this patch, is of course going to be the new champion ZOE, the one designed by Certainly T. I've already made a few videos showing you guys some sweet gameplay of ZOE, some being cool, some being not so cool, and just pretty much what the champion can do, the abilities and all that good stuff. So for now, I'll just quickly go over ZOE's kit and my overall opinion on whether or not I think the champion will be OP. Her kit essentially revolves around utilizing her Q and her ultimate together to try and make the Q do as much damage as possible. Her W lets you pick up summoners. Her E ability is essentially a sleep for a few seconds, and her passive is essentially a sheen or Lichbane effect that also applies to her bubble. Now my thoughts on ZOE. I honestly believe that she is really strong. Now she is fairly difficult to play, and it will take several games to fully understand how to utilize her Q, her ultimate, and even her E properly in the best ways, the best scenarios, because there's so many different types of ways that you can actually do it. But she has very obnoxious poke with her Q ability, because you can just go behind walls, use your ultimate with Q together, go over the wall, throw the Q, and if it hits someone, they're probably going to be chunked unless they're a tank, and there's a good chance that that in itself, assuming you're sieging, is going to be giving you a lot of pressure and easy way to get the tower. I also think that her E ability is very strong, arguably probably one of the best things in her kit altogether, because this thing not only goes over walls, and my goodness is the range increased by a lot when going through walls, but at the same time, if you ever get hit by this ability, you're pretty much 100%, unless you have cleanse or QSS, about to get CC'd, and you know it's coming. And while you're drowsy and you're going into the state of actually falling asleep, everyone else around you on the enemy team is going to be just setting up to just unleash the full burst they can as you get stunned, which in my opinion is better than a stun, because this gives you a little bit of time to kind of understand where the champion is about to get CC'd, so you can just set everything up and unleash it all at once. Of course, her W, taking summoner spells and items such as Yomu's or maybe something like GLP, is pretty damn cool, I have to say, and it's definitely changing the way you can actually approach a team fight, but I definitely feel like it still gets overshadowed by how just ridiculously strong her E ability is. Her ultimate, very low cooldown, doesn't have a whole lot of uses in itself, but being a little bit of a trickster here and there can be obnoxious. But the main thing is, of course, to utilize it with your Q and sometimes your E as well, where you can ult in, E the target, put them to sleep, you go back to your initial location from your ultimate, and then you just set up the Q and either kill them or do a ridiculous amount of damage. And last but not least, I also noticed that she has a fairly decent chance to cheese people at level 2 in the laning phase, assuming they don't have cleanse or some way to cleanse CC in general at level 2. Because all you have to do is take Ignite, flash in, land your E ability, and then you just wind up that Q, and with Ignite and the auto attack from your passive and maybe a couple auto attacks after, there's a good chance you'll either first blood them or make them use both summoners and force them to retreat back to base. All in all, a pretty damn good champion. I definitely think she's going to be quite a strong contender for the mid lane, but again, only time will tell. The first patch, maybe not the highest win rate in the entire world, as this champion does take some time in games to get used to, but I feel like people, once they understand her, she will be considered to be one of the better mid laners. The next thing I want to talk with you guys about very quickly is about the new game mode coming this patch, Project Overcharge. Now I do have a gameplay of this on my channel as well that I highly recommend checking out if you have not yet, but essentially this game mode is coming out to sort of advertise the new project hints coming out for Vi, Jhin, and Vayne, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But in case you haven't seen the gameplay, I'll just give you a very quick TLDR of what the game mode is actually like. It's going to be a 3 versus 3 playing only ADCs on a very big battle arena where you can actually fly around and teleport around, which is pretty cool. You score points by either killing the opposition, or you can also acquire these kind of floating, kind of weird supply truck thingies that once you kill them, and if you kill 5 of them, your team becomes overcharged, so you're essentially just unkillable. Think of being just like Super Saiyan God, and you just run around killing them as much as possible. They can't stop you whatsoever. Your cooldowns refresh as well, and that's the basis of the game and how you obtain points, on top of also, of course, the cards that you killed to become overcharged in the first place. Surprisingly, it was actually quite a lot of fun, maybe because I enjoy the faster paced kind of game modes, so I kind of enjoyed it. It was a pretty interesting battle arena aspect, and I think a lot of you may enjoy it as well. Next up, before we go into some champion changes and also changes to the new runes, I want to very quickly mention that there is going to be a health bar update, as you can see on your screen here with how it looks like. It's going to be not only just different looking in general, because they want to change the way it looks to make it more, I guess, easier to see, especially during heated battles, but also it has a new effect now to where if you actually get chunked and just take a lot of burst damage like a Veigar ultimate, the health bar sort of shakes rather than just seeing the HP deplete as per usual, just to give a better notification and a feel that you just got hit really hard. So next in the video, let's quickly talk about the champion buffs and nerfs. There aren't a lot to talk about, but let's get into it regardless. The first one is going to be Lux, who did receive a nerf, though it is probably one of the most troll and random, disgustingly ridiculous nerfs I have ever seen in my entire life. The base AD on Lux has actually been lowered from 53.544 to 53.54, so literally a 0.004 decrease. Whether or not that actually changes anything is actually beyond me, and whether or not that's legitimately a nerf is questionable. I'm just gonna assume that there's a typo on the site at surrender at 20, but yeah. Following that, we also have a nerf happening to Rammus, where his base armor has been lowered from 40 to 36. And following that, we also have something happening to Talia, where her HP growth has been increased by 3 and her armor growth has actually been increased by 0.5. And last but not least, there seems to be a nerf happening to ZOE, where her W's AP ratio has been lowered by 10%, though this one is not confirmed that it's coming into these patch notes or it has been removed. Next up, we have some changes happening to items and also the new runes. The first of which is going to be Hextech Gunblade, where the lightning bolt damage has been increased from 175 to 250 to now being 175 to 253. So literally a 3 increase in the maximum damage it can output, which really isn't all that much either and somewhat questionable. But let's get into the changes happening to the new runes. The first of which is going to be revitalized in row 4 of the resolve tree. Now it states heals and shields you cast are 5% stronger and increased by an additional 10% on targets below 40%, rather than just being heals and shields in general that you cast, or I'm assuming also get cast on you. So all in all, definitely a nerf happening to revitalize over here, which is a good one for sure, because it was a little bit too overpowered where you can be a tank, you can have your own shields, but then also having shields put onto you by, let's say, Lulu, Karma, Janna will also be applied with the increase in how much it's actually shielding you for, which was a little bit too overpowered. Next up, we have one that I'm sure a lot of people were waiting for, Summon AERY being nerfed, where the damage has been lowered from being what it is currently, starting at 20 and maxing at 60 base damage, to now being 15 instead of 20 and 40 at the maximum base damage. Not the biggest nerf in the entire world for the laning phase, though it's still definitely a nerf, but once you actually start leveling up and you start actually proccing the damage more often, and it's actually a higher level AERY technically, it's going to be falling off by quite a bit. So I am going to be a little bit more questionable as to how many people, especially in the mid lane, will be taking it now, and maybe now it'll actually be a proper support keystone instead, but we have yet to see for certain. Next up, we also have a buff happening to Predator being one of the keystones as well. Now, this one is a really good keystone in paper, but when you actually play it, it just doesn't feel good enough because the damage it offers isn't anything completely impressive, but the cooldown on this thing is just way too long. So what's being done is the damage has actually been buffed, you can see here, by 40 as it levels up, and the cooldown has actually also been lowered by 30 seconds from the beginning and also by 20 seconds by the end. Now, whether or not this is actually enough to make Predator a legitimate keystone, especially with all the other better options available, is still up in the air, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. And finally, we have Ghost Poro, which received a very slight change. The tooltip has been changed from stating Poro channel is interrupted if you enter combat with the champion to now saying Poro channel is interrupted if you're taking damage. So I'm assuming that means that if you're taking damage from a minion or something like that, or maybe even a jungle monster, it won't apply, while champion damage will of course still cancel it out as per usual, so nothing really different there, I believe. And last but not least, guys, we have 3 great new skins coming out, being the 3 project skins, one being for Vayne, one being for Jhin, and one being for Vi. I made a gameplay on the Vayne one, and I have to say, and this is like no joke at all, it is easily one of the best skins in League of Legends, period. It's just extremely flawless. It feels great to play, it doesn't feel clunky, it looks great, the backing animation is fantastic, and just almost everything about this skin is just insanely good. For myself, I personally will definitely be picking up the Jhin skin, and I will potentially consider the Vayne skin, even though it is going to be most likely quite expensive on RP overall. But guys, that is about it for this video. There you have it, the biggest changes coming for this patch. Not the biggest patch in the entire world, but there were definitely some notable things to talk about. As for champions to watch out for this patch, I think it goes without question to say that ZOE is definitely one you want to watch out for. For one reason, because, well, she is still a fairly difficult champion, so you probably don't want people first timing her in, ranked and stuff like that, because you're probably going to have a feeding mid lane. But for number 2 is the fact that if someone does finally play enough games somehow and learn her and, get really good with her, I think she has a ridiculous amount of potential. There's a lot of ways you can combo her abilities and a lot of kind of things that she can do throughout the map, so she is not someone you should be taking too lightly. Very, very strong if played correctly. And the buffs and nerfs happening to the actual champions weren't really anything substantial, so it's kind of hard to say which of them you should actually watch out for, since I don't think it really changes anything at all. But finally, AERY got nerfed and Predator got buffed, so maybe Predator will actually be a keystone now. But either way guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit it with that like button, share with your friends, but I'll see you guys for the next one. Peace.